Millions of dollars. Who controls these flows? Millions in donations, hundreds of names, and then one person suddenly sends a $2 donation 1,500 times a day. To trace this, you need access to bank accounts and transactions. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to try to figure out how these miracles work. Bob Kashman wasn't a famous reporter on magazine covers. He was that odd guy who spent hours not watching the news but staring at spreadsheets. Donor names, amounts, dates, names of political committees. The open data from the United States Federal Election Commission, the Federal Election Commission, became his hobby and his obsession. Where others saw boring reports in these numbers, Kashman saw patterns. One day, something appeared in those patterns that made his fingers go cold on the keyboard. He noticed something strange. Ghost donors. Yes, it turns out that ghosts also participate in election campaigns, at least in one criminal organization which is sometimes called the Democratic Party of the United States of America. Anomalous donation patterns were discovered through the ActBlue platform. Multiple small donations, dozens of dollars supposedly from the same people, sometimes elderly, with tens of thousands of transactions in the name of a single person. This scheme is called Smurfing, when one large source of money is split into many small donations from different or fake individuals. In order to bypass limits and mask the origin of the funds, such exposés often mention figures like $22, 95,000 transactions, about $3 million, and so on, etc., as well as mentions of Gretchen Whitmer. She was actually a candidate and became the governor of the state, as well as other Democrats. What are the benefits for the beneficiaries of such schemes? This is a real and public accusation from a politically motivated camp, not something made up by a screenwriter. But for now, they remain only accusations, not established legal facts. Kashman discovers that 3 congresswomen from Michigan received 75 of their donations from other states. Strange, but who cares? So, someone living in Montana cares about what's happening in North Dakota, which is like 1,000 kilometers away. Well, maybe 5 people from Montana are vacationing in Dakota, and that's why the money was sent from there. You know that famous park with presidents' faces carved into rocks? But not 75. Kashman writes letters to federal agencies quietly, yes. Kashman writes a series of additional letters and sends them. The case is occurring under the Biden administration. A number of organizations overseeing election integrity do not respond. The investigation stalled until one detail changed everything. To uncover it, Kashman spent more than a year continuing his work. But the discovery was worth the time and effort. They should give a Pulitzer for the best investigation of the year for something like this. But the awards are in the hands of the liberals, and they'd rather let Kashman rot in prison than publicize his discovery. What kind of discovery was it? ActBlue is the largest online donation platform supporting Democrats since 2000. Billions of dollars have gone through it, and for party headquarters, it has become something like a circulatory system. Millions of people across the country donate $5, $10, or $20. It's fast, convenient online, but in the massive transactions, Kashman noticed strange patterns. The same names, hundreds and thousands of small donations, sometimes almost every day. amounts that were cut out as if by a template. 1923.31 dollars with slight variations. He was especially struck by a group of elderly donors, people over 70 or 75 years old. According to the reports, some of them seemed to live not a life, but the donate button. Kashman uncovered tens of thousands of transactions totaling almost several $1,000,000 and started calling the listed names and addresses. Some people answered in surprise, saying, "Well, yes, I think I donated there," while others said they didn't understand computers at all. And in the researcher's mind, a word from professional jargon came up: Smurfing. Here's a diagram of these very Smurfs. This is when one large flow of money is broken down into many small transfers from different people or under their names. To bypass donation limits, obscure the origin of the funds, and create the illusion of widespread popular support, Kashman began to claim in his articles and posts that some of the small donations through ActBlue were not the will of thousands of people, but the work of the scheme's organizers. The deeper ZHEK Skalka delved into the numbers, the more inconvenient connections he uncovered for some people. Names of active Democrats began to appear in his tables, including Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer and other well-known politicians who received significant amounts of money through the same platform. Kashman wrote appeals to oversight bodies responsible for monitoring the integrity of elections. In them, he spoke about thousands of transactions from a limited number of identical names, about elderly donors with unrealistic activity, and about millions of dollars that, in his opinion, looked like laundered and fragmented donations. As I already said, there was no response, no reply. Some say he was lucky. His writings first attracted the attention of conservative and opposition-minded media, and they published his charts, quoted his calculations, and put words like money laundering, Smurfs, and large-scale donation scheme in their headlines. On the other hand, the platform associated with their politics responded briefly and harshly. All transactions undergo legal checks, and the reporting complies with FIS requirements. The accusations, both political and politically motivated, come from people associated with the opponent. That's how the information front was born. For some, Kashman was the man who exposed a massive illegal scheme. For others, he was an activist making bold claims. Based on selective data analysis? What kind of selective analysis? 2,500 times from one person at $23 each. At first, nothing was visible. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed a contract with GMMB to search for donors. There are actually hundreds of such companies, and all politicians work with several of them. What's so strange about that? But only after this signing did donations to Whitmer's company increase to, listen further, after the contract with the GMMB agency, the growth in donations increased the very next day, 100 times. Quite a coincidence, right? Or is it a well-organized flow of this very smurfing? Everything looks random until you start counting and realize that this is money stolen from taxpayers, or maybe the Democratic Party's share coming back from abroad, called a kickback for, let's say, foreign aid or something like that. So the United States supplies weapons to Ukraine, they resell them to Africa, and the money is shared with the same Democratic Party. Or they sell them to the Taliban, Hamas, Afghanistan, billions worth of weapons. And then they organize an emergency evacuation so that it's impossible to count what's left in the warehouses. The main thing is to have protection, and the Democrats had excellent protection. Biden is half crazy and everything is run on his behalf by ghouls hungry for money and power, signing any order with Biden's auto pen. And we are idiots and suckers, and the Democratic Party despises us for that. In 2024, Kashman writes to Congress, "Our right to fair elections has been stolen by streams of laundered money." And again, there's no answer. He writes that 22 elderly donors over 95,000 transactions and $3 million were all under the names of people older than 75. Let me repeat. 22 names of elderly United States citizens over 70 years old were found who supposedly made 95,000 transfers totaling $3 million. The transfers were for $31 each, sometimes a bit more, sometimes $31.50. All this was under the names of people older than 75, not just those at 75. Strange retirees. They have nothing to do, and they spend all day transferring money to election campaigns. How can I find such retirees and give them my account? Political technologists claim that such schemes have existed for years. ActBlue denies any violations and says their reporting is completely transparent. Since 2004, just so you understand, more than $16 billion have gone through ActBlue, which went to the Democratic Party. It's possible that this is just a new fundraising model, or it could be a cover for something much bigger. The official representative of ActBlue, of course, claims that all operations are monitored and that the accusations are politically motivated. Take Russia, for example. Things are simpler. If told to write 73, that's what they'll write. In the United States, though, it's much more complicated. You have to steal money from taxpayers, then hide it, and then, using schemes like the one I described to you, send it to the intended recipients. The main thing is the result is the same. Gretchen Whitmer was elected governor and, by the way, is seriously aiming for the presidency, or maybe at the very least the vice presidency. If this information is true, it means that American democracy has faced the biggest financial fraud in recent decades. And if not, why is no one willing to conduct an independent investigation to just as easily disprove all the rumors? Because we know for sure that the truth is not afraid of transparency. Something else is afraid of transparency. The most intriguing thing about this story is that it doesn't have a classic ending. There is no courtroom scene where everyone is exposed, no official verdict that recognizes ActBlue or specific Democratic Party leaders as participants in a grand money laundering scheme. What there is real masses of donation data. There are analyses and accusations from Kashman and, let's say, allied media, as well as categorical denials and statements about legality from the platform and politicians. There is a lack of a major, widely recognized official investigation that would settle the matter in a way both sides would accept. That's why Kashman's story today isn't a finished detective story with a resolution, but rather a tense report from the middle of unfolding events. Every reader is faced with a choice. Either believe that behind the dry numbers there really is a carefully designed financial machine of influence, or consider that what you're seeing is a politically colored interpretation based on real numbers but with far-reaching conclusions. But what is clear? While some argue whether this is a crime, the very structure, modern politicians, millions of micro-donations, automatic withdrawals, and intermediary platforms make such stories. This is exactly what turns statistics into a story that reads like a thriller, even if the final verdict hasn't been delivered yet. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot has already been published on this topic, so read the sources, check the data, and share the truth with your friends. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, because we talk about things that, as far as I know, you won't find anywhere else, not in other places or countries. See you soon.